This is the Louie T Network.
In the lab room. In the lab.
See, first come the preseason, and I don't take a day off. And then my team was 6-10, and we ain't smell the playoffs. Yeah, I seen the Super Bowl, but I heard they just play balls. A lot of teams had injuries. Sam Bradford had to take off. Go hard in the offseason, but you don't know the half. Before you know, we gon' look up, and we ready for the draft. They dressed up in that suit tie, and I don't know how to act. They waiting, so patient, so they can put on that hat. Who else could it be? But your man Luke. Okay, so when she asks you where you was at, you tell her you in the lab room. Who else could it be? Who? But your man Luke. Okay, so when she asks where you was at, you can tell her you was in the lab room. Yeah.
In the lab room.
Who else could it be? With me, or me? Louie T, welcome. You are in the lab room. Of course, I am your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me. Fourth installment of the In the Lab Room Draft Podcast series. And I'm over here struggling, man. Y'all gonna have to bear with me. I got a sore throat, and I don't give a damn. We gonna talk, and we gonna chop it up and put a nice, big, pretty bow on the 2016 NFL Scouting Combine, put it in the rearview mirror, and start gearing up for free agency. So that's what this pod is going to be based off of and dedicated to, is putting a nice, pretty bow on the happenings, all of the different transactions that took place at the 2016 NFL Scouting Combine. It was a pretty nice weekend, I must say. I enjoyed the festivities. I enjoyed all of the different things that took place at the Combine. Guys went out, thought they fared well for the most part. Probably every group except the receivers were pretty impressive to me. You know, and I've heard a lot of different things coming out of the Combine. Again, believe half of what you see, none of what you hear, even if it's spat by me. A wise man once told me that, man. Words to live by. Keep that in mind. But I've heard a lot of number of people saying that scouts weren't that impressed with the offensive side of the football and this, that, and the third. Look, keep it in perspective, okay? Sometimes we get lost in the numbers and, you know, we want, oh, this guy ran a slow 40 time. He's not a football player. Come on, man, stop. Antonio Brown ran a 4.57 at the Combine. Do you watch Antonio Brown on Sundays and say he's a 4.57 guy? Or do you just watch him and say, damn, he's a hell of a football player? He might be the best receiver in the league. Do you say that? Or do you say, man, he ran a 4.57 at the Combine when he was at Indy? Nah, you don't say that. So look, don't get caught up in the numbers, man. Numbers are for geeks, okay? That's what numbers are for. Football players go out and play football. So just know what you see on tape. Extrapolate that in your brain and how that would relate to the NFL and the game. That's what you need to do. Well, let's jump into the draft fodder, man. Let's jump into the draft fodder and what took place at the Indy Combine. And the way we're going to do that is by me dropping a gem on your melon. Let me drop this gem on your melon, man. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T-double-E. Open up your mind and your brain. Let me get you thinking a little bit. Draft fodder. Up at the Indy Combine. Jaylon Smith and his injury situation. To me, that was one of the biggest takeaways from the Indy Combine. Nothing that happened on the field, but it was actually a guy that didn't perform in Jaylon Smith that my heart goes out to, because here's a guy that worked hard his entire life, and I don't know the guy, but I'm a Notre Dame Fighting Irish fan. I've watched him grow as a football player throughout his career at Notre Dame. Watched him get to the point where he was probably going to be a top 3 pick in the draft, and he tears his knee all to shreds in the final game of his collegiate career against Ohio State in a bowl game. Not able to participate at the Combine. I talked about him on this very podcast as one of the guys, and he was literally the top guy on my list of 7 guys that needed to clear the medical red flags. And I said, if he can go to the Combine, put teams at ease with his medical, he's going to be a top 5 pick in this draft. It wasn't, to me, it was no doubt in my mind, because what we saw on tape, he was a dynamic football player, one of the best linebacker prospects we've seen come out of the draft in quite some time. If he was healthy, problem is, test results weren't favorable for him. They said that he has potentially some nerve damage. Don't know when that's going to heal. Don't know when he'll be able to get back on the football field. I already said that I didn't think he would be able to help a team in 2016. I already said that. I went into the Combine thinking that. So it didn't surprise me to hear that he may not be able to help a team. I knew that going into the Combine. And I still felt like he was a first-round pick if you looked at the medical and said, hey, you're going to be just fine. You're going to be able to come back and play at the relatively same level that you were at before you got injured. If I could get something of the sort on record, and nobody knows anything for certain, nobody can guarantee you anything. That's the part of the football situation that makes it such a scary sport, is nothing is guaranteed to you in football. You could be perfectly healthy, and that's just athletes in general. You could be healthy one second, and more so in football, you could be hurt the next. And because it's such a physically demanding sport, that's why I'm always on board for players getting paid, because you don't know when your time is up in sport. For Jaylon Smith, just a little frustrating that a guy with so much talent that deserves to be in a top 5 discussion doesn't know where he's going to be drafted. He could fall out of the first round, and right now, because of the medical, it seems like that is more realistic than him being drafted in the first round. Then the question turns to, where is he drafted? Is he a second-round pick? Do you take a third-round flyer? Where is Jaylon Smith right now from a medical standpoint draftable in this upcoming draft? That's a scary proposition for a young man that's worked so hard to get to this point. But I've said it before, and I'm on record saying it again. If you're a team at the back half of the first round, you don't get this kind of value late in the first round, generally speaking. And because of his injury, you might get a gem to fall right to you. And you got to think about it. If you're a team that was in the playoffs last year, you have the luxury of being able to stash a guy, draft and stash a guy, put him away, and hope that he pays dividends for you later on down the line. And some team needs to have the kind of foresight necessary to say, hey, I don't know what the medical is going to be for this kid in a year from now, but if my doctors tell me that there's a chance, and that's all I need with an athlete like this, there's a chance that he could be back to 90, 95% down the road, I don't know how you don't take a flyer on this dude. And look, I know it's a first-round pick, and generally speaking, teams in the league want a first-rounder to come in and contribute right away. I get it. I understand. That's the mindset. But this is a special case. I'm not saying it. I'm just saying, if you feel any type of way about him getting back to 90, 95% of what he was as a football player before the injury, I don't see how you don't take a flyer out on Jaylon Smith. I just don't. But we'll see. He's got time before the draft to clear the medical and put teams at ease and make them feel better about what he'll be able to do for them in the future. I don't see him helping a team in 2016. I already knew that. What can he bring to the table moving forward after that, though? We'll see. Interviews. I talked about that. Remember, that was a big hot button topic on this program. On one of the pods. Talked about the top 7 players that needed to nail the interviews at the Combine. And what we don't talk about a lot of times is how important interviews are at the Combine. The medical and the interviews are probably more important than the on-the-field drills for some of these guys. And at its core, the Combine was constructed and developed so that teams could actually sit down in a room face to face with guys and learn who they are as people, as players, and what their football acumen is. That's what the combine was at its true essence and core. They wanted to get the medical on these guys. They wanted to sit down and talk to them and get to know them and know who they would be spending money on and potentially a draft pick on. And that hasn't changed. We've turned it into a spectacle now, and we've turned it into this big, festive event. But at the end of the day, teams still want to sit down and talk to guys. Teams still want to get medical on guys. And so there were some big interviews. Robert Nkemdiche, I watched his press conference with the media. I wasn't impressed. I walked away with more questions than I did answers. And for me, if I'm Laramie Tunsil, keep my name out your mouth, man. Okay, don't drag me into none of the shenanigans that you got going on. I shouldn't have to answer questions based off of stuff you said. Keep my name out your mouth. So, I just walked away from Robert Nkemdiche saying, bruh, you didn't handle that the way you were supposed to. And you've been coached up for the last 2 months on how to address these questions, and I just felt like he didn't come out and he didn't address them the way he needed to. He needed to be more culpable. He needed to come out and say, yeah, look, that's me. I messed up. I dropped the ball there. It won't happen again. And move on. And instead, he seemed like he was still deflecting blame. And that's not what teams want to hear this time of year. You got to do a better job of selling yourself. So I don't know what he did in the interview process. I heard that he didn't interview that well. I also heard that Mackensie Alexander rubbed some people the wrong way. I watched his press conference. I walked away saying, how is this guy not a first-round pick? He's competitive. He's smart. Sounds like he puts the work in the film room. I walked away saying that if he goes out, and I still believe this, I haven't swayed one bit. If he goes out, runs well at his pro day, if he goes out and tests well on the field athletically at his pro day, he's a first-round pick. And I'm not moving off of that, and I still feel like that's a strong position in this draft, and I think he's one of the better players at that position in this draft, and I think he's coming off the board in the first round. If he goes out, runs a good time, tests well, jumps high, all of those good things, I think he's a first-round pick. But I heard his interviews didn't go so well. Look, again, believe half of what you see, none of what you hear, even if it's spat by me. I don't know what that actually means in terms of him interviewing, him not interviewing well, whatever. I don't know if he interviewed well or not. All I know is all it takes is one. That's it. Same thing with Jaylon Smith. All it takes is one. One team has to believe in you enough to spend a first-round pick on you. That's it. 32 teams in the league. 31 of them have a first-round pick. All it takes is one. Noah Spence. Heard his interviews didn't go all that well either. Look, I thought he did himself a huge solid by the way he performed and the way he spoke at the Senior Bowl. So I feel good about Noah Spence. I think what hurt him more so was his production on the field at the Combine. And look, I told everybody going into the process, he's not Khalil Mack and he's not Von Miller. Everybody wanted to compare him to them. Those guys are elite level athletes of the highest caliber. You don't get those guys every year. They don't grow on trees. They're a once every 5 years or so type of athlete. You don't get those guys every year. So I could look at him on tape and tell you he wasn't running a sub 4.6 40. I was expecting 4.65. I got 4.8 flat. I didn't see that coming, but that's what happened. Okay, deal with it. He's still an explosive athlete. He's just not those guys. And for you to try to compare him to Khalil Mack or Von Miller is unfair to him because that's not who he is as a football player. Stop doing that. Those guys are elite, physical specimens, okay, of the highest caliber. You're not getting those guys every year. So stop comparing him to those guys and just look at him from the lens of Noah Spence. He's Noah Spence, an explosive edge rusher with some faults and some flaws in his game. But if you like what he brings to the table in a draft that to me doesn't have a bunch of explosive 3-4 outside linebacker edge pass rushers, you're going to have to settle on this guy if you think that he can get a job done at the next level. Simple as that. End of discussion. Let's move on from the draft fodder to the 7-on-7 drills, man. Let's get this 7-on-7 drill ramped up because I got a bunch of 7-on-7s that I want to jump into. I got 3. So in order for me to get to all of them, I got to blaze them and I got to get to the next one. So let's jump into the first 7-on-7 drill of the day. Top 7 players who made money at the 2016 NFL Scouting Combine. Felt like there were 7 guys, and really this list is more than 7 guys. I couldn't just narrow it down to 7 because I thought there were a number of guys that really helped themselves, elevated their draft stock, and have a chance to make some money. Let's talk about these guys on this list. You start at number 7. It's a 2-way tie at number 7. 2 offensive linemen that I thought really went out bald at the Combine in day number 1, and I think they made themselves some money. First guy, Jason Spriggs, number 7 on this list, tied with Ryan Kelly, center out of Alabama. Jason Spriggs, offensive tackle out of Indiana. I thought he went out, tested well, 4.9, 4.40. We talk about the 10-second split. His 10-second split was good as well. Don't have it off memory, but his 10-second split was great. I thought he went out and he tested athletically very well. I looked at him and I did not know he was that type of athlete. One of the faster 40 times. 10-second split was good. I watched him move athletically. I thought he looked good getting out of his stance. He looks like a natural right tackle in this league. Don't think he's a left tackle. Some people like him as a left tackle. I actually think he's a really good prototypical right tackle in this league. And look, in this day and age now, you can't hide right tackles anymore. You saw that in the Super Bowl. If I got a premier edge rusher, I'm not going to waste him on your left tackle. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take him, and if you have a guy on the right side that is inferior, I'm just going to take my elite pass rusher and put him in front of your right tackle and let him abuse him all day long. So you can't hide right tackles anymore. That day has come and gone. Both your tackles need to be rock solid. And I think he's a rock solid right tackle at the next level, and I think that's what he projects as. And I thought he was impressive the entire day in day number 1 at the Combine, as was Ryan Kelly, a guy that, to me, put himself head and shoulders above the rest of the center class in this draft with his performance at the Combine. Thought he moved well athletically. He's a big kid at 6'4", bigger than you normally like at the center position, but I think he's going to come in and want to be one of those guys that you plug and play day 1. I think he looks to me the part of the best center prospect since Travis Frederick, and we know where he went in the draft. He was a first-round pick by the Dallas Cowboys, hasn't looked back since. So I like Ryan Kelly a lot. I think he's a really good prospect, and I like Jason Spriggs a lot, and I thought both of those guys helped themselves tremendously at the Combine in day 1. You move on to number 6. I got 2 more guys on the list. Emmanuel Ogbah, defensive end out of Oklahoma State, and Darren Lee, linebacker out of the Ohio State University. Both of these guys I thought came out and athletically showed out. Ogbah, remember, I talked about him on this podcast as a guy that needed to just go out and kill it on the field. He was on my list of guys that needed to go out and have a good showing on the field. And I told him, I gave him a direct message. I said, look, man, I know technique-wise you're lacking, you're raw. Just go out and be an athlete, dude. Go out and run fast, jump high, and impress athletically on the field. And that's what he did. He went out, he timed well, he went out, he ran. And he surprised me because I thought he could do all of those things, but I didn't think he would be as fluid an athlete. I thought he looked loose. I thought in the conversion drills, he went out and he converted well, flipped his hips. He looked like a natural athlete. I thought he was going to be tightly wound and be one of these guys that found it hard to change directions. None of that happened. He was fluid. He ran fast. He looked good. I think he helped himself potentially into the first round with the way that he ran because someone's looking at him and saying, he's an explosive athlete. We can mold him and turn him into the pass rusher that we want him to be. But just athletically, this guy's gifted. We got to take a flyer on him. And I think he may have pushed himself into the first round discussion after the way he performed at the Combine. As did Darren Lee. Look, I already knew he was going to be an athlete. I already knew he was going to come out and test well athletically. 4.47. I didn't know. I couldn't put a time on it. Thought he would be like a 4.52 guy. 4.47, phenomenal. And in this day and age where linebackers need to be stronger, bigger, faster, Darren Lee fits that mold to a T. And I look at him as another one of these Ohio State linebackers that just ran himself into the first round. You're looking for an athletically gifted linebacker to come in and play all 3 downs. Darren Lee may be that guy for you. And I thought he cemented himself as a guy that probably is going to come off the board in the latter portion of the first round. Number 5, I got 2 more players, both from the Ohio State University. Ezekiel Elliott and Eli Apple both helped themselves tremendously with their performances at the Combine. To me, Zeke Elliott went out and showed that he's by far the best back in this draft. And again, It's rare that you have a guy with top 10 talent at the running back position because of the way the position is viewed. Most people look at the running back position as a disposable entity. I can get a running back in the 5th round. I can get a running back in the 6th round. I can get a running back in the 3rd round. I don't need to spend a 1st round pick on a running back. That's how we look at the running back position. But when you get guys like Ezekiel Elliott that come along, and they don't come along very often, again, much like elite edge pass rushers, once every 5 years you'll get a back that can change the game. He's exactly that. 4.47 at that size. You don't get that every day, folks. And he went out, he ran well. I thought he struggled catching the football a little bit, but he can catch the football. I thought he ran well. I thought he showed every single reason why he's going to come off the board in the top 10. I think he elevated himself from a mid to late 1st round pick to a top 10 pick. And I think the discussion starts at Dallas at number 4 as to whether you should take Ezekiel Elliott in the top 10. And that's what his combine performance has done for him. He made himself a boatload of money with his performance. Eli Apple, another one of these guys from Ohio State that you look at and you say, he's a physical specimen. They had 14 guys at the combine, and all of them are going to be drafted highly coming up in this spring's draft. And Eli Apple, to me, started that 1st round discussion again. I thought he was late 1st round, early 2nd round going into the combine, running a 4.4 flat at a rate around 6'1", 200 pounds at the cornerback position. Come on, man. Stop it. This guy's probably going in the 1st round now. And when you do the types of things that he did, and I thought he tested well. I thought he moved well. I thought he looked good in all of the on-the-field drills. I thought he showed ball skills. Eli Apple made himself some 1st round money in my estimation with his performance at the combine. We move on to the number 4 player or players in this instance who made themselves money at the 2016 NFL Combine. Another two-way tie at number 4, 2 wide receivers, and really, I'm going to make it 3 because I got to throw my other guy in here too. Will Fuller, to me, probably made the most money of any receiver at this year's Combine because the question wasn't, was he going to test well athletically? We knew that going into the Combine. We knew that already. We knew he was going to run fast. We knew he was going to jump high. He's an athletically gifted young man. The question was, could you catch the football, man? Can you catch it consistently? Don't drop the football. Well, he didn't drop the football. And by catching the football, Will Fuller made himself some money. The fastest player at the 2016 NFL Scouting Combine was Will Fuller, or second fastest behind Keith Marshall of Georgia at 4.3, 240. That's blazing fast. And for a receiving corps that's going to be really slow this year coming into the league, he stands out above the rest with that kind of elite speed, and he caught the football, and I think that's going to probably make him a 1st round pick as well. Sterling Shepard, another guy, and you know how I feel about Sterling Shepard. I absolutely love Sterling Shepard as a football player. Wide receiver out of Oklahoma. 4.4, 840. He exceeded my expectations. I thought watching him on tape, if he could just get to 4.5, I would be happy with that. And to get to 4.48, be a sub 4.5 40. Wow. I think he has all the makings. Everybody wants to throw him in the slot. I'm like, why can't he be the next Antonio Brown? He's got the tenacity. He plays with a level of toughness that you need to play out wide. He's got the quickness. We've seen that, and I think that's why everybody loves him in the slot. But with that speed, I think he can play out wide. And he's a big enough guy, and I like him, and I want to see him get an opportunity to play out wide. We'll see, but he helped himself tremendously. I think he started a 1st round discussion. I don't think he's still going in the 1st round, but I think he started a 1st round discussion with the way he went out and performed at the Combine. And Josh Doxson, I had to add him in there. 4.5 flat, wide receiver out of TCU at 6'3", right around 200 pounds. He was a guy that I said, look, if you can just find a way to show some kind of speed, you're a 1st round pick. And 4.5 40 flat, that's some kind of speed. For that size, I think he's a 1st round pick. And I think he made himself some money. I think all these receivers, wide receiver Will Fuller out of Notre Dame, Sterling Shepard, wide receiver out of Oklahoma, and Josh Doxson, wide receiver out of TCU, all made themselves some money with their performances at the 2016 NFL Scouting Combine. Number 3, a guy that I felt like needed to come out and just test well. Look, we knew he was an athlete. But again, we couldn't quantify, we couldn't put numbers to the things that he did on the field at Alabama. Well, we can put numbers to them now. Number 3 is To hear the rest of this podcast and more, go to the website louietnetwork.com, or you can find this podcast and more on iTunes or Stitcher. That's louietnetwork.com or on iTunes and Stitcher.